I'm sure you have a lot of tips on how to like loosen up before a show or like loosen up before like a presentation or public speaking.
I mean, that's what we're doing right now, right? Is trying to find something that, like you talked about my cup, like my mug, like that's a perfect example of like, oh, she
Yeah.
noticed. You're making me talk about myself outside of like my work or like what today's tema is. You've made my brain shift into like comfortableness of like, oh yeah, I know this mug, and like, oh, this is this. And like now I'm talking about things that are natural. I think in
Mm.
improv, I tell people like I know 1% about a lot of stuff, but I don't
Oh.
know 2 or 100%.
So it's
Yeah.
like relatability is kind of the magic that allows people to
The
kind of loosen
key.
up. It's
It's
a
the key,
key.
yeah, to get people to like want to participate in an improv show.
Okay, so Mike is the founder of the Pirates of Tokyo Bay, Tokyo's only bilingual improv comedy group. Aside from their hilarious monthly shows in Ibiza, they've also taught many professionals how to communicate more effectively through their corporate workshops. Google, the US Embassy, Fortune 500 companies are just some of their many satisfied clients, and their incredible work has also been featured in comedy festivals in Hong Kong, Singapore, and New York. Mike has been running the Pirates for almost 20 years now. He is an improv actor himself and an expert in communicating in a way that's compelling and memorable. So, Mike, thank you so much for being here and welcome to the
Wow.
podcast.
Wow, thank you for having me. 20 years. Oh my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
I used to
almost
have
20
hair.
years.
I used to have hair 20 years ago when I started. Oh, yeah, but 20 years. Yeah.
Yeah,
I
it's
mean,
I'm sure it's been a very, very wild ride with a lot of stories to tell that we can get into later. But
sure.
firstly, I just wanted to say an incredible performance last week. I don't think I've laughed that hard in so long, and you had such a friendly and awesome crowd. And I actually made like a number of friends at your show.
Oh, cool.
It
Great.
was so much fun. Yeah. I think it was truly a magical space to be in. And I think like the place that you guys got as well, it fit the theme so well.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a great bar in ABC, What the Dickens. It's great that you made friends. I think that's awesome. Like, because our show is in Japanese and in English, we do find it a good place to like bring a date or bring friends. Like, there's multiple languages. Like, you can all kind of relax in your native language and like
Yeah.
try to follow along with the other language that we perform in. So that's great that you made friends. Awesome.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So to level the playing ground a bit for our audience, could you share with us the story of how and why you started Pirates?
Yeah. I had been doing improv comedy in the States. I had done it in Australia. I'd done it in England. And I don't know if you want the long story or the short story, but I wanted to try improv comedy in a non-English speaking country. And so that is what brought me to Kansai because that's where Yoshimoto and Shochiku are based there in that kind of Kansai band. So yeah, I really wanted to try comedy in a non-English country. Life brought me from Osaka after 5 years up to Tokyo to continue with the Pirates. And so we've been in Tokyo for 15 years, Osaka 20.
So why did you want to do improv in a non-English speaking place then?
Yeah. Initially, back when I had hair, like before BB, before balding, I guess. I,
Maybe.
yeah, excuse me. I wanted to get like a corporate loan or a federal loan in the States to open my own theater. And
Oh.
to do that for the application, I wanted to make myself kind of stand out. I was assuming other people are looking for federal grants for the arts
Hmm.
in the Minneapolis community. And so I thought if I diversified my application by going to England, going to Australia, and then going to a non-English speaking country and kind of getting that experience, it would make my
Hmm.
application kind of unique. And so I really thought I would only be in Japan for like a year.
Wow.
That's what my mom thought as well. 20 years later, my mom still thinks that, and I'm still in Japan. So that's kind of the real reason why I wanted to go to a non-English speaking country. I
Hmm.
looked at China initially to go there, and
Hmm.
then pivoted and went to Japan.
I see. And then now you've been here for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
What a turn of events.
Yes.
I see. So the theater that you initially wanted to open, was that also kind of comedy related or more like theater, musicals, or something else?
In my head, it was just like a dream. I really liked the idea of doing the business side of things plus running the art. And
Mm.
so it probably would have started as an improv theater group, but then for business reasons, you probably need to get other, black box theater groups or like other smaller
Mm.
performances there just to drive revenue. So it probably would have been a small theater. Like I had this whole vision planned out. I was going to buy an abandoned gas station, gut it, paint the walls black, set up, like figure out the floor plan and like all
Uh-huh.
that stuff. This is all in my head. And that was 20 years ago when I was young and ambitious and now
What? And this is in Minnesota that you had this vision.
yeah.
Do you want to show your cup just for context?
Yes, I'm very proud to be from Minnesota. So everything in my house in Japan is branded Minnesota because I'm a
We
dork.
we were just talking about the term ufta.
Yeah, ufta is Minnesota band, Minnesota slang for like wow or skarita or like oh my gosh. So like moving apartments with a friend and you're like oh ufta, or
Oh,
like some sports game and like you finally won. You could be like ufta. Yeah,
yeah. Do you think it says something about the Minnesotan character or the people that live there?
I don't know if ufta is. There's another one like oop, which is
Oh.
like sorry, and like we're almost close. We're next to Canada, so like we have that same kind of stereotype of like saying sorry for everything, and like
Uh-huh.
oh, sorry, excuse me. So that's another one. OPE, oop. And
Okay.
that's
Ope.
yeah, yeah, that's another
Eh,
Minnesota slang. So, oh, sorry, like bumping into someone. Yeah, we're very polite
eh,
people.
kawaii, kawaii. It's like ope is like a word that you forgot the first letter to. Do you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
like,
yeah, 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 yeah. Yes.
なるほどね. Okay, we'll go on to the next question then. So last time we talked, I kind of mentioned to you that my first impression before even going to a show of the Pirates is that it would just kind of be like a comedy show composed of gaijins in Japan about gaijins in Japan, no offense, which is something that I personally probably wouldn't attend. I mean, I have my own stereotypes too, I'm sure. But after being to a show, I clearly know that it's not that, but rather a show that's really open to bilingual folks of like all levels, and it's like a very inclusive and welcoming place. I know
Mhm.
that creating this space was a very deliberate choice on your part to like not brand it as like a Gaijin improv comedy group. So could you kind of share with us like the context of that and the thought process that went through?
Yeah, I'm happy you realize we're not a bunch of gaijins telling gaijin jokes. I'm sad that that's what you initially thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, but because I've seen that in, we've toured 20 countries, so we've seen these kind of different groups in different countries, and
Mm,
that's really not what we're trying to do. I think there's 27 members in the Pirates. We just had auditions, so I'm a little rusty on the total number, but
mhm,
like I think it's 27. I think like 5 or 6 are American.
mm,
I think like 8 are Japanese,
mhm,
and like almost half are female. So we're really trying to be like the bento box of comedy. Like there's little, there's British members, there's Canadian members, there's Singaporeans,
mhm,
we don't want to be that foreigner driven group. Uh,
mm,
we talk every practice that we have, we talk about what's happening in the news so that we can kind of relate to like Japanese news. Um,
mhm,
I think we started off branding ourselves as the bilingual group, but that caused a little confusion with our audience, our target audience, where they felt that they had to be bilingual. But
mm,
we're really trying to be a Japanese and English first, Japanese and English group.
mm,
We're putting the word Japanese first because we want to lean into like that's the fact. We're in Japan,
mm,
Japanese and English group. We we work hard at our Japanese. Not all of us are fluent in Japanese, and so rather than gumroing or like putting our members that maybe aren't totally fluent in Japanese on stage in the
mhm,
Japanese sections, we kind
mhm,
of hide them or we don't have them perform in
mm,
that less strong language. We
mhm,
want the audience to see the product that is native Japanese or
mhm,
fluent Japanese and fluent English,
mm,
as
mm.
opposed to kind of like laughing at the lack of language ability.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so we want the product to really represent like we are all based in Japan right now. We might be British, Singaporean, American, Japanese, but like this moment in time, we are all in Tokyo. Uh,
Mm,
and
mm.
so it shouldn't be a foreigner driven product. It should be a we are in Japan product.
So, man, that's true. That's true. It's like the shared experience of everyone being in
Yeah.
Tokyo at this very moment.
Yeah, we kind of learned this. I don't know if it's by mistake, but our first one of our earliest tours was to Manila for a festival, and 20 members. It was just down to who was available at what time to be able to go to this festival,
Mm,
and so it wasn't by like choice or anything. It was just like who are the 4 people that can go this weekend to Manila, and it turned out it was 4 white guys with Bible names. It was like Matt, John, Mike, and Bill or whatever. And so it felt we didn't realize it at the time, but like the host in Manila was like, "Welcome from Japan, the Pirates of Tokyo Bay," and like 4 white guys come out, we're like, "Hey," and we're like, "Oh, this doesn't look like we're from Japan." Um, but that wasn't by choice. It was just like who was available. So now we
mhm,
really put a lot of effort when we're touring to be like, do we have full representation of our membership?
mm, mm.
They show that we are from Japan.
Oh man, that's hilarious. I
Yeah,
feel like I would have had so many like assumptions if I saw like four Bible name white guys on the stage
yeah,
saying
yeah,
they're from Tokyo.
yeah. We did use Japanese just to be like, we'll try to prove it, but like it still wasn't as good as like a native Japanese member coming in. So we're much better at that now when we tour.
That's true for sure. I think what you said earlier about like you're not trying to create comedy or like laughs from the lack of language knowledge. Like I feel like I see a lot of comedy where it's like, "え、何言った?" Like I don't understand. 何それ?みたいな。わかんない。英語わかんないみたいな. There's a lot of like laughter that can come out of that, but I think your show had none of that.
Mm,
So it was like kind of one of the very few times in Tokyo where I've been like, I'm so comfortable here,
mm.
being like kind of, not perfect with my Japanese, but I'm also still Japanese, not completely Western, and I don't feel like an outsider.
Yeah.
So, meh.
Yeah, I think we're not famous enough to like piss off the crowd or be aggressive to the crowd or make them feel uncomfortable. Like if we're super famous, then like maybe famous comedians can kind of get away with that because there will always be an audience draw. But like we
So,
kind of need everyone to feel comfortable and enjoy the show so that they come back to the next show. Like that's
hmm.
how we survive basically is by making sure everyone feels welcome, everyone's enjoying it, everyone's included in the languages, or if it's not a language, maybe it's pantomime or gibberish, or there's multiple ways to connect to the non-native speaker of whatever language we're performing in, whether it's a non-native Japanese speaker or a non-native English speaker. So
Hmm.
I think we work very hard at making everyone feel included,
Hmm.
and then we hope that they see a professional product so that they want to come again.
Hmm. Hmm. For sure. I mean, for me, that experience, like that was totally fulfilled, and I wanted to bring all my friends for the future shows. So, thank you
I
for
didn't pay you
creating.
to say that for the record, right?
This
This
is
isn't like a paid ad. It
It's
sounds great.
not.
I love it.
No, it's completely from the bottom of my heart. Like, yeah, it was just so fun. I also definitely want to bring my parents too, because both of them are kind
Yeah.
of like kind of bilingual, but not really. So, but I think they would still enjoy it.
Nice.
So the next question is, I think we've all heard of improv comedy before, but maybe only those who have actually done it before really know what it is. So as a person who's done it for decades, what is improv comedy and what makes it so special and unique?
Ooh, wow. Okay. I think it's special because I mean they're kind of stereotypical answers. It's special because every show's different, every show's unique, every show's based on what the audience gives us for a suggestion. So the show that you saw last week will never happen again, and
Mm,
hopefully we can match it or improve on it for the next time with a totally different show. The
hmm
kind of stereotypical answer of improv is the phrase of yes and. Your partner might say something to you on stage or endow you with some sort of information, and you have to say yes or agree to it, and then add some information.
mm,
So that's what's unique about it. You never say no. It's always yes and there's some fun in that, whether it's like slapstick or very physicalness or some unique situations. Like I don't know if you know the Three Stooges, like really old style comedy, like where they were
mm.
like, this is like, man, I don't know, 80 years ago, or like black and white comedy, long
Okay.
time ago. But there were all these kind of maybe kind of manzai style, I guess, but
Uh-huh.
like very physical, like poking each other in the eyes or like hitting each other, and like they would never say no. They would just like accept it, laugh with it, and roll with it. Like there's
Okay.
very much this accepting of what life throws at you. Uh,
hmm
and that's what makes improv special. There's like a famous, I don't want to say like a founder of improv, but like one of like the main people of improv, Keith Johnstone. And he said, do on stage, perform on stage what you don't want to have happen to you or a loved one. Do that on stage. So like
Wow.
my grandma in a wheelchair going down Mount Fuji, that would be
Uh-huh.
terrible. Right? You'd be like, oh my gosh, like watch on like she's going down a mountain, she can't control it. Like that would be horrible for my grandma or a loved one or a friend,
Yeah.
right? Do
Uh-huh.
that on stage. Because then the
Okay.
audience can kind of enjoy it going like, oh, thank God that's not happening to my family. Like I'm
Oh,
gonna enjoy this, right?
okay.
So I think that's what makes it fun is we're putting ourselves in situations that the audience can kind of feel like, like that's funny because it's not happening to me. It's relatable, like it's a possible thing. They're
Uh-huh.
not impossible things.
Yeah.
So they're all things that can connect to regular life and rooted in characters that people can be familiar with.
I see. Okay. So you kind of hinted at comedy in that specific scenario comes from the
Yeah,
fact that it's hilarious because it's not happening to me.
yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, if we really wanted to dig into improv, there's also like dramatic improv. Like there's different kinds of improv.
hmm
And so we are very much the Pirates of Tokyo Bay are very much a comedic style of improv, as opposed to
Okay.
like improvising a Shakespeare play, right?
Mm,
Or improvising, an opera or a drama or something like that. And so there are different kind of subgenres of improv that different groups around the world really like and
mm,
go very deeply. The
hmm
nuances to how do you improvise Shakespeare? But we focus very much on we call it short form improv comedy, short
hmm
little scenes, and
hmm
comedic focused
hmm
the shows. The workshops are not comedic focused.
なるほどね. I don't mean to be like a consultant here, but in from your perspective, what is like the objective of improv comedy then?
For me personally, or for the Pirates, or in
Like
general the industry.
like per show, what is the main like to craft the most bizarre story or to make the audience laugh as much as possible or
Yeah, so we have like we try to think of ourselves as like a very formal business. So we have our mission and our vision and our creed and all these values. And our mission that we've written out is to make everyone laugh regardless of the language.
Mm,
I think that's what we're really trying to do. So laugh is part of the comedy, like we are a comedic focused public performing group, and
mhm.
then it's to connect with the audience regardless of their language.
なるほどね. I see, I see. One thing that I really felt watching your show last week was there was so much freedom in the room, like creative freedom. And I don't think I felt that in a very long time. It's just everything is acceptable and it's more about what you can make out of what's on the stage. I'm just thinking like in contrast to like seminars and webinars that I've been to where it's been like
Mhm.
so like gishiri, like and it doesn't it feels like blocks rather
Yeah,
than like a
yeah.
flow that you guys had. So
So for hosting, I think of it, and that's another skill set. Like maybe I don't sing, but I hope I'm good at hosting. Like there are some members that are very good at hosting, some that
yeah,
are not good at hosting, but they're good at other things. And so
I see.
I think of hosting as a party. Like it's totally a party. So
Mhm.
if I had a party in my house and I was just like, "Welcome to my house. There's the beer. There's the wine.
Mm.
The bathroom is over there. Please have a fun time at my party." Like technically, all of those words are correct.
Yeah.
All of that information is helpful, but
Uh-huh.
it's not packaged in a way that makes the party successful, right? Everyone's like, "Wow,
That's
this is
true.
weird," but
Yeah.
like grammatically it was correct, factually it
Yeah.
was correct. So
hmm
hosting can't be like welcome to the show. Like it is an acting, it's a
Mm.
job, it's a role just as
hmm
much as the singing games or the guessing games, the pantomime game. So We
How do
work
you
on that
make
with
sure?
members.
Sorry to interrupt, but like, how do you make sure that you are fulfilling that role?
You can like you can sense it. Well, I mean, one, we practice it
Mm,
a lot. Besides the comedic side of things, we practice hosting, like even when to blow the whistle, like to end
mm,
the scene. I try to visualize it with the group is we want the scene to like feel like a roller coaster going up to
hmm
the top of the roller coaster, and then we blow the whistle right at the top of the roller coaster. We stop
uh-huh,
this so that the audience is like, no, I want more. I want to know
uh-huh,
what happens.
uh-huh,
But if we were to let the scene continue past the best part,
hmm
we probably wouldn't nail the landing. We probably
hmm
like different people have different expectations. Like I want the character to do this, or I want the character to do that. So we
hmm
can't make everyone happy. But if we end right at the top,
Yeah.
everyone's happy because in their head they're finishing that story,
hmm
right? And
That's
so that's
true.
also a skill for the host is to like when do you end this scene? You don't end it when it goes like this, and then like maybe it was not funny and it was bad.
hmm
It was like, okay, let's stop the game, let's move
Yeah,
on. Like, oh, that didn't work.
that's
So
true.
these are all different skills that we work on. Yeah,
なるほどね. I'm definitely keeping that one in mind for sure.
yeah.
We can move on to the next question. So, like I've mentioned a billion times up until this point, I enjoyed your show so much last week that I mentioned it at every single one of my 9 to 5 check-ins, like meetings. I was just telling everyone, like, I went to this awesome comedy show this past weekend. You guys should go because my office is entirely bilingual as well. But
Oh, great.
um, yes, I think everyone would enjoy it. And basically, it like blows my mind how much all of that was improvised yet hilarious and memorable. So I think everyone kind of wants to know how does that happen? Like, what is the formula to make improv so hilarious and memorable? How do you explain things and tell stories in a way that doesn't make your audience's eyes kind of glaze over?
Yeah,
Hey everyone, I want to take a quick break to tell you about today's sponsor. You know, as someone who grew up between cultures, I'm always searching for authentic communities in Tokyo that go beyond those meetups that end up just being language exchanges. I'm just not into that. And that's exactly why I want to tell you about Musubi Tech, which is founded by Joe Baz. The other week, I was at their roundtable event at the Golden Egg Ventures in Shibuya, and it really struck me how different this space is. We're not talking about your usual networking event where people just trauma bond over life in Japan. This is a community of genuine tech professionals, product managers, UX designers, founders, investors who are genuinely passionate about building bridges in Japan's tech ecosystem. What makes Musubi Tech special is the type of people that they attract. I found myself in conversations with fully bilingual founders, Japanese entrepreneurs who've been in the game for decades, and international professionals, all sharing insights about building products and companies in Japan. And here's the thing, nobody was there for shallow chit chat. They were all there to have real conversations about tech, innovation, and the future of our ecosystem. Joe himself is a product manager who moved to Japan with this vision of connecting the right people, people who are comfortable being uncomfortable, whether that's speaking in English or Japanese. Musubi means bind together in Japanese, and that's exactly what he's doing, creating the space where multicultural tech professionals can come together, share ideas, and build something greater than we could have alone. So if you're in tech and looking for a community that goes beyond surface level networking, check out Musubi Tech. Whether you're bilingual, international, or Japanese, if you're passionate about something greater than just the cultural barriers, this is your crowd. Now back to our conversation about improv comedy with Mike.
There's a couple of things that I visualize and we talk about in the group. Besides like the roller coaster and like when to end a scene,
Mm-hmm.
the whole show itself, we also try to think of it as like a wave of whether it's alternating languages, English, Japanese, English, Japanese. We don't want it to be a big wave where it's like, an hour of English and then an hour of Japanese. We try to alternate.
Mm-hmm.
So that hopefully keeps everyone engaged, even if you're not able to follow along.
Mm-hmm.
Even within the games itself, we're switching languages based on the audience suggestions. If everyone in the audience yells out a Japanese suggestion, we all internally are like, okay, this is more Japanese show than an English show because that's who's here tonight. Or if like a tour bus of like Americans come in and we're like, wow, okay, this is going to be a lot more English than Japanese. So
Mm-hmm.
we're adjusting on the fly based on that audience. And then, as I said before, like relatable characters. We have an exercise. I don't know how in detail we want to go, but we have this exercise not to apply directly to a show, but we call it 1, 2, 4.
Mm-hmm.
And excuse me, it's 4 lines of dialogue done by 3 characters. This is just an exercise that we do. The first character is just make a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, mom. That's it. The second person, the second line of dialogue makes a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sorry, I was drunk last night, mom, kind of
Mm-hmm.
thing. So they made a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
Then it goes back to that first character for the third line,
Uh-huh.
and that person needs to escalate that conflict. So the son just said like they were drunk.
Uh-huh.
Maybe the mom says like, this is the fourth time you've been drunk this week. Like,
Uh-huh.
no more driving or whatever. So we've had the first line, good morning, mom. Second line, a conflict.
Mm-hmm.
We're drunk. The third line from that first character is, you've been drunk too many times.
Mm-hmm.
Then there's like a resolution line. A third character comes in for the
Mm-hmm.
fourth line,
Mm-hmm.
and they try to resolve that whole scene. Like maybe, hey, I'm the local bus driver. Like I'm happy to stop by and pick you up anytime you need a ride or something like that. Or I'm an Uber driver. Like just here's the app. Please call me if you need a ride.
Uh-huh.
And so they're not supposed to be funny, but we're working on skills that hopefully work in the show where we need to make a relationship. If the
Mm-hmm.
audience is watching a scene and it's just like, hey, dude, and you're like, hey, like, do you want to do the thing? And you're like, okay, that sounds fun. Okay, bye. Like no one knows where we are. No one knows who we are. No
That's
one knows
true.
what we're talking about, right?
Uh-huh.
But like if in English or in Japanese, I'm like, Ohio Kasan, or like good morning, mom.
Uh-huh.
Right away, the audience knows that relationship. Okay,
Uh-huh.
that's and in improv, you have to say yes and. So you're like, oh yeah, okay. So we try to get that out of the way very quickly. Who are you? Hey, Shacho, or like hey boss, or whatever. And
Mm.
then we try to make a conflict because no one's paid money to see like just a safe
Yeah,
scene like
that's
let's
true.
go shopping. Okay, I bought this. Great. Good job. Let's go home now. Okay, bye. Like
That's true.
nothing happened. There's
That's
nothing
true.
exciting there.
Yeah.
So we need to make a conflict. And then we need to make the conflict bigger, like
Hmm.
the roller coaster. So that's that third line, make it bigger. And then the scene needs to end. There needs to be some sort of wrapping up of
Hmm.
this. And so what we practice is identifying that one relationship, or that two, that conflict, or that three, that heightening the conflict, or that four of just resolving it. So if a scene is going too long or we're missing one of those elements, someone else, another performer will come on stage and just throw in that information. So
Oh.
if two people are like, hey, dude, and like, yeah, hi, how are you? And you're like, okay, dude, like no one knows.
Uh-huh.
Another performer might come on stage and be like, children, behave or something. And it's like, oh,
Uh-huh.
okay, okay. I understand. That's the mom, we're the kids.
Oh, okay.
And we're not all Americans, we're not all Japanese. Like the performers themselves, we're all from so many different countries that we need to get on the same wavelength
Hmm.
to connect and perform. Same
Hmm.
with the audience. So if the audience knows who we are, if the audience knows what the problem is,
Hmm.
it should work. And so I think that's a core skill that we work on behind the scenes
Hmm.
that are kind of the elements that lead to success in the stories that we put on stage.
なるほどね. So it's like, how do you like covertly create those structures of relationships between each person so
Yeah,
that we can understand what's going on?
yeah. I mean, everyone thinks of improv, or not everyone thinks. People who think about improv think that improv is like totally free, or like you can do whatever you want, right?
Hmm.
That's not necessarily the case. The words
Hmm.
that come out of your mouth are free, but there's a lot of rules and structure that you're thinking about. It's the same
Hmm.
thing like in baseball, I guess.
Hmm.
If baseball didn't have rules, it was just like here's a ball, here's a bat, go have fun.
Yeah.
Like what? What do you do? Like there has
Yeah.
to be rules. Like one person stands on a little hill and
Uh-huh.
he throws a ball, and
Yeah.
then like you have three swings to
Uh-huh.
get a hit, and then you have to run to that first base. You can't
Mhm.
run to the second base or third base. You have to go to first base. That's the rule,
Mhm.
right? And so like all of these rules make this game of baseball work.
Mhm.
And so all of these rules in improv make hopefully the stories and the scenes and the art form work.
なるほどね. So after I went to the show, I spent the rest of the weekend or like that evening watching improv by like on YouTube because it was just so fascinating.
Okay.
I've never watched improv before, and that was the first time. And I think I watched like a star group of SNL people doing
Yep.
improv. I think it's called ASCAT.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, yeah, very famous. Yeah.
And it was so funny. And it also looks so free, but I'm not now realizing there's a lot of like rules in everyone's heads
Oh
about
yeah.
formulas of how it happens.
Yeah. Yeah. And the more you know those rules, the freer it becomes, or like the easier it becomes. Same
Hmm.
thing in baseball. Like if you're a 10-year veteran of baseball,
Hmm.
maybe easier than like some rookie, right?
So, yeah.
And that's why it's also possible to kind of guest perform in other groups because maybe you all have a similar understanding of the rules.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah, that's great. You watch it. I would say it's very hard to watch improv not live. You kind of
Hmm.
need to be in that element. You kind of need to know. Like sometimes there's internal jokes. I think in your show, um, there were some callback jokes or some things that
Yeah.
we kind of referenced. The was your show the financial consultant
Yes,
person?
that was
Yeah,
it.
right. And so that was a suggestion that kind of happened in the early beginning of the show, and then we kind of referenced it multiple times. We'll
Yeah,
never reference that again in another show because those people at that audience won't know that history,
it's true.
right?
That's
So it's
true.
just in that moment. And so I think watching improv on TV or YouTube is hard because you might be missing some of that. Like, why are they talking about this thing?
Hmm.
Why is the audience talking
True.
so much? Like, there's another group called a famous TV improv group called Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Hmm.
Very famous. Started in England. It's also in the States, but that's actually like a 2.5 hour show that's
Yeah.
edited down into 20 minutes for TV. So
Oh,
like a TV audience thinks like, wow, these guys are amazing,
uh-huh.
which they are, but it's a 2.5 hour live show that's cut up into the best 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard to find improv on TV because yeah, you need that element of being in the moment.
Hmm. Hmm.
But that's great that you went out and found it, and you found a good choice. Like, there's
Yeah.
lots of bad improv on the internet. Good choice. So yeah, good job.
It was definitely an old one. I think it was like 10 years ago or
Yeah,
more. Yeah,
yeah,
but it was hilarious. And it's like people we probably all know from SNL, but it was really
yeah,
cool to see them in a more unrehearsed or
yeah,
seemingly unrehearsed element. Yeah. So
yeah.
it kind of
Even
relates
even
to,
Netflix
yeah.
has some improv shows on it. Actually,
Oh,
there's like a two
really?
percent improv show, Middleton and Fitch, I think it's called.
Hey.
They're on Netflix, so even Netflix is trying to at least get into it.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, definitely check out Netflix for some improv. There's not a
Uh-huh.
lot, but yeah.
I'm writing it down because I want to watch it now. It's so funny. Um, I wanted to ask, it kind of relates to what we just talked about, but it's on the topic of how do you tell a story in a compelling way that doesn't make people kind of lose interest? Maybe it's more of like me projecting my insecurities, but when I talk about myself or certain experiences, I'm so worried that the audience or like whoever's listening will just lose interest. Are there like ways to mitigate that or prevent that from happening when you're explaining things?
Yeah. Sorry, my cat is very loud in the background.
Okay.
I apologize. How to make a story compelling, I guess, is
Mm-hmm.
your question.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think the relatability is what is needed. Like you you need the audience to kind of believe the story. You need the audience to kind of feel that it could. Maybe it comes back to that grandma going down a mountain in a wheelchair. Like you need the audience to kind of believe it or trust it. I think I talk a little bit about in improv. I need to know like 1% about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I often talk to people about their job or like what their hobbies are. And if I can pull elements of real stories or real information and put that into the scenes,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's compelling. We had this financial consultant person talking in the last show in the audience, and like if we try to pull some of that information that we might know about the industry,
Mm-hmm.
hopefully it's compelling to them. Um, we we also have some tricks. This is maybe a little bit of a tangent, but like
Mm-hmm.
if there's I'm trying to figure out the best way to put this, a rowdy audience member or a disengaged audience member,
Uh-huh.
or a inebriated drunk audience member,
Uh-huh.
we'll actually work with them more and engage with them more
Really?
and try to make whatever that short scene is or story compelling to them to hopefully lock them in and get them recommitted to the show rather than like ignoring them. Then they get louder and more annoyed.
Uh-huh.
And so like we're kind of focusing on who we're trying to be compelling to based on like the feel of the audience or what's happening.
Uh-huh.
If one side of the audience is really engaged, we might need to connect to the other side of the audience because we need to get them back. We need to re-engage with them.
Mm.
Or if it's some shy members, we might want to either engage with them or disengage and let them kind of be shy in their their space kind of thing.
Mhm.
Our definition of compelling needs to kind of be fluid based on kind of the vibe and what's happening in the audience so that we keep
Mhm.
everyone involved. Improv, we need those suggestions. We need people to yell stuff. If no
Mhm.
one yelled anything like, give us a location in Tokyo where you went shopping, and everyone was like, no, not say anything.
Uh-huh.
Then we don't have a scene, right? We don't
Uh-huh.
have a story. We need that suggestion. We need somebody to yell Ginza or Pungi or whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so we are constantly making sure that we're checking in with the audience, that we're making our stories compelling,
Mhm.
which then leads to success to get the next suggestion.
なるほど
I hope
ね。
that answered your question. I think I
Yeah,
rambled
no,
a
it
bit.
does, it does. And I feel like every time we talk, I have like a billion questions for you,
Go for it.
um, but like I don't think I'm the only one who's ever been in a crowd of especially comedy shows where I've been like, oh, please do not pick on me. Please don't ask me a question. Please.
Uh-huh.
Like, where do you think that comes from? And like, I'm sure you've thought about this before, like that person
Yeah,
in the crowd who's like, don't pick me. Like, how do you navigate that situation? And also, what is your theory on why we feel like that in the crowd sometimes?
I think, well, people confuse improv with stand up. And I
Uh,
think that's a stand up thing is very much like talking to someone in the audience and like making fun of their jacket or whatever. And like that
yeah.
kind of, it's one person standing up there and making fun of the audience kind of thing,
Hmm.
potentially. So that's some stand up style. And so I
Hmm.
think people have that image of like, oh, I'm just going to be attacked for that, which isn't us. And then in improv, there is sort of a Japanese. There's other improv groups in town, and there are different ways of getting the suggestions to try to mitigate that. So there's another group in Tokyo. We're all friends, so it's all good. Their way is kind of giving out a survey before the show. Give us a location, give us a relationship, give us a food, give
Hmm.
us a fear. And so
Hmm.
they write out this enketo, the survey, give it into the host or whatever. Then during the show, they just pick up the paper and look at it and go, okay, we need a suggestion, that. So there's no connection to who wrote it.
なるほどね。I
So if the
see.
scene is not successful or not as funny, it's not like you gave us the location. That was
Uh,
terrible. And then they're
uh,
like, oh, I don't want to talk again.
yeah.
Right. So that's some groups that they do it that way. We don't do it that way. We kind of just opt for, I think there's some value in the audience hearing the suggestion in the moment
Hmm.
and kind of, hopefully laughing with it or kind of going, oh, Jessica, you're like, yeah, that's right.
Hmm.
But then the pressure's on us to make sure that they feel comfortable enough to then give another suggestion. Because
Mm.
again, we're not super famous, so we need the audience to come again. If we were
Hmm.
like, that was so dumb, why would you
Hmm.
say that?
Uh-huh.
Then we're never coming again to the show.
That's true. That's true.
So that's kind of how we've opted to do it. And then
Mhm.
hopefully by being bilingual or having native Japanese members and native English speakers, we also can kind of build some trust with the audience that, yeah, you can yell out in Japanese.
Mm-mm.
We'll understand it and we'll
Hmm.
accept it. Like it's all good. Anything that you say is good. And
Hmm.
then the pressure's on us to create a story that works.
Hmm.
And it's not the audience's fault.
そうね、そうね. I feel like the show that I was in, everyone was pretty open to yelling out in both English and Japanese. Like they're
Yeah,
fine.
I think it was a pretty good audience. I never want to blame. I never want to blame the audience. But yeah,
Hmm.
I think it was a pretty engaged audience.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, that financial consultant was pretty funny.
Yeah, and then he had that person had like a couple dates with him
Yeah,
at the same time. It was very unique. Yeah,
it was a first date. It was so funny. But
yeah.
okay, now before we move on to the closing questions, this is one big question, but you've worked with folks from embassies, big tech, Fortune 500 companies, people who I think a lot of us regard as, successful in their careers. But what are the most common mistakes or misconceptions about communicating in corporate that you've seen?
The biggest mistakes.
Yes, or misconceptions.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, we work like with various embassies, and there might be a Western manager and then a Japanese team,
Mhm.
of subordinates, in that embassy.
Mm,
Big tech companies often are kind of managers and then like subordinates. And I think the biggest misconception that we've tried to iron out or work with is these teams or some of these people think everyone has the same motivation. Like
mm,
there might be some like manager who's just like, we're gonna work super hard and like let's go. But like that might not be the motivation in everyone in the team, you know.
mm.
Uh,
So,
and 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 that motivation changes throughout the week, throughout the day, based on like how's your kid feeling? Is your kid sick and you're at home and you're trying to do your job? Like your motivation is always changing.
oh,
It's not like not everyone is bought into the company and like whatever the vision is for that manager or that team. And so the biggest misconception we found is, not everyone is aligned all the time, and you need to
mm,
kind of check in and kind of adjust that. You need to listen. Even managers being able to say yes and kind of
mm,
working with people, working with your team to kind of adjust them
mm.
are things that we've tried to make people aware of, I guess.
Mm. And you do this through corporate workshops.
Yes, we do this through corporate workshops. Like, if we want to get super nerdy, I have prepared a little bit about us.
Wow.
Iris,
Yes,
so
please.
we'll just go through this real quick. But you asked about corporate, and this is my chance. Kai season's coming up too, so if your company needs like a Kai party, we're able to crush that. But yeah, we do corporate workshops. We've done it all over the world. Like we've had companies in Singapore fly us out and do workshops for them as well. Um, Corporate communication messages, like how you do that with passion, hopefully connects with users and customers, and being good at risk taking,
Hmm.
effective risk taking is really helpful for the group, for companies. This is an example of a show at a different venue, not the same venue that you went to.
Hmm.
Uh, but we've done lots of shows in Tokyo, um, all over the world, and for lots of different clients. Like I'll dig into kind of this idea of yes and. I think
Hmm.
we talked about yes and this should apply to the corporate things that you're asking about.
Mm,
Yes and is super important. The yes part is, you have appreciation, you acknowledge people, you're showing that you're heard. Like
mm,
the person feels good, like, yeah, they heard me. And then you're adding some information to that. And so this isn't like the manager of a company needs to agree all the time. There are kind of tactical ways that you can kind of agree
mhm,
and then strategically add some information to kind of focus that team member.
mhm,
What you don't want, if there was a graph of this, of yes and, like, you don't want to just say no to everything.
mm,
As a manager, that kind of demotivates your team. You're like, oh my gosh, like, oh, the manager always says no.
mhm,
Or if the manager asks a subordinate and the subordinate's like, nope, I'm not going to do it, that probably doesn't help their career.
mhm,
You also don't want those team members or those managers that are just like, yep, 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 sounds good. Yep, cool, sounds
mhm,
good. You're not really adding any information. You're just a passenger in that conversation or in that team meeting. You also kind of don't want that selfish person who's just like adding more and more and more and
mhm,
more and not listening to what you're talking about. They're not acknowledging. They're not saying yes, that you're
mhm.
heard. You really want that, not generative AI. This is maybe a new word that we need to change. But like you're generating things of saying like, yeah, and we could do this thing. So
Mhm,
like a very quick, I have a quick comedic example of yes
mhm,
and, I guess. Like the first person is, I have this idea for a cupcake. Yeah, and it will have amazing icing.
mhm,
Yeah, and it'll be all natural, it'll be super healthy.
mhm.
Yeah, and we can put like vitamins somehow in that. Like you're just adding more and more information to it.
Uh-huh.
But like in the corporate workspace, there might be a different way of doing yes and. Someone might have like, I have some improvement ideas that I want to talk to the development team about.
Mhm,
Sure, and I'll ask the design team if it's in their roadmap. Like, do they have the space, the capacity to do this? I'll check with them on that. That's a good idea.
mm,
Another person, like, yeah, I'll ask the sales team, like, do they have any feedback on this idea? Um, and then, like, yeah, then we can add it to our backlog. This is very tech focused, but like, yeah, then I'll add a ticket to our backlog. And so you're listening to the person and you're coming up with a new idea for driving that conversation forward. So we work on these kind of skills in
mm,
corporate
mm,
communication to try to listen to each other, accept each other, find some new ideas. And the
mhm.
end result should be a lot more generative or a lot more in detailed and including everyone.
Hmm. Just for the audience's context here, Mike is actually a product manager.
Surprise!
Yeah, that's his actual like full-time, and both are full-time, I'm sure, but he also has a different, completely different job, which is maybe why you explained that example that you just shared with.
Very tech focused. Yes.
Yeah, for sure. Just for context.
Yes. Yeah.
But I think one common theme that I'm hearing from the very beginning of our conversation that oftentimes like it does take a lot of listening and observation, whether it's to your audience at a improv comedy show or whether you're a country manager of a big Japanese team. It takes a lot of listening, iterating, and then saying and, yes, and then working with what you got.
Yeah. You
For
summed it up
sure.
perfectly.
It's definitely it was like a very big lesson for me, and I try to incorporate it into what I do every day as well. So thank you
Love it.
for sharing that. I hope that, this will bring some people to collaborate with you as well. So now we have the three final closing questions. They're quick questions. The first one is, what is a book that you'd recommend?
Yeah. I read it a long time ago. It's always stuck in my head as just like a fascinating book. It's a book called Blink. I
Uh-huh.
think like the subtitle is like The Power of Thinking Without Thinking. So it's about like what happens in the first like 2 seconds of your thinking. Like in
Mhm.
that blink of an eye, you're creating like your response, or like you already have kind of your reaction to it, right? In
Mhm.
that millisecond, either you love whatever you're thinking about, or you hate it, or you have an idea, or you don't like the idea. Like what is that in that 1 millisecond, in that blink of an eye? So the author, Malcolm Gladwell, I think you can find it online. It's in all your ebook places.
Mhm.
But that is a book. There is a little section about improv, that I align with. And I think I reference baseball as an example of like these rules. I
Mhm.
think Malcolm in the book Blink talks about basketball, a similar
Mhm.
example. But that moment of like, it's a fascinating. It's not all about improv. It's psychology and like what happens in the mind, what happens in team communication, like what are the reasons behind these millisecond
Mhm.
feelings that you have, right? Like you can maybe think over time and really investigate and deep down into an idea, but you formulate some idea in like a millisecond.
That's true. It's true.
How? What is that?
Yeah.
Uh, and how can we get better at that? And that's what his book's about. I think it's fascinating.
I gotta read it. That sounds like right down my alley. I would love that type of
Yeah.
book. I
And it's
gotta
not,
read
I don't think it's not like a very long book. Like it's very easy to digest.
it.
Yeah. Blink, The Power of Thinking Without Thinking.
Oh, that's a killer title too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. It's good.
I'll link it in the description of this episode.
Right.
So the
I'm not
question,
getting paid. I'm not getting paid. There's no like, yeah, affiliate promotion here.
so the second question is, what is something that you love but also hate about Japan?
It's the same answer for both love and hate, I guess. Rules.
Mm,
And maybe it's because I'm an improviser and there are some elements of improv that have no rules. Obviously, we talked a little bit about there are some behind the scenes rules, but
mm,
I love, maybe let's talk about what I hate about the rules. A couple of quick examples that come out. I've tried on purpose to be like 1 yen short of a
uh-huh.
purchase, like a Gambini or somewhere, just to see if they're like, oh, like, because in America, like you're like a penny short, right? And like the register person's like, I'll forget it, like it's fine, see
Yeah.
you later, kind of
Uh-huh.
thing. That's never happened to me in Japan. Like occasionally, like I'll just see if I can just be 1 yen short, just see what happens. But that's the rule,
Uh-huh.
right? And so you're like, okay, Shogunai, like here's my extra yen.
Yeah.
I promise you to the people watching this, like I'm not being annoying about it. I'm just more of just like curious to see, like I'm not doing it all the time.
Hmm.
Another one was like I went to the bank once, and I think the bank closed at like 4, and I
Hmm.
went to the bank at like 3:57 and talked to the guy, and they were like, hey, you need to get your hanko, your stamp for this thing. I was like, great, I'll be right back.
Hmm.
I'll go get it. I came back at like 4:01, and like they're locking the door, and they're like, bye, Shogunai, like it's 4:01. And I was like, I just talked to you 3 minutes ago, 4 minutes ago. You told me to go get my hanko. I'm back. It's 4:01. Let's do
Hmm.
this. Like, yeah, the rules are we're closed at 4. And so you
Hmm.
missed it. So like that lack of flexibility, and maybe that's what I love about improv. There are ways to kind of bend the rules or kind of be flexible or improvise life, I guess. And
Hmm.
so that's one thing I dislike about Japan is how rigid the system is. But
Hmm.
then what I love about Japan is the rules, and how like when you know the rules and they're in your favor, you
Hmm.
can use those rules. Like they have to follow the rules. If you're the okyakusama or whatever, like you got to do
Hmm.
the thing that is in the rule. And
Hmm.
there's no like the opposite of like the Americans are like I'm not going to do that. And you're like,
Hmm.
what, you have to like
Hmm.
that's what you have to do. And so I had this one example. Man, I hope this doesn't make me feel like a annoying foreigner. But I had this coupon at my convenience or my supermarket, and it
Uh-huh.
was like 20% off or 10% off groceries on Tuesday the 15th or
Uh-huh.
whatever the date was, right? And I was like, okay. But I went there. The supermarket closes at 2 in the morning. So I went there at like 1:30 in the morning on the 15th with my coupon. And I was like, yeah, I want to buy this stuff. And they're like, yeah, it's for tomorrow, the
Hmm.
15th. Like meaning when they close and then
Hmm.
reopen in the morning at 9, that's when the coupon is useful.
Uh-huh.
But for me, mathematically, it's now the 15th. It's 1:30 in the morning, according to the Gregorian calendar. Like we are in the 15th. And so
Uh-huh.
this coupon, there's no subtext that it's like you need to, it's not for the midnight to 2 a.m. that day.
Uh-huh.
There's no rule. And I asked for that. I was like, is there a rule that I can't use it in these 2 hours of the actual date?
Uh-huh.
And they're like, oh yeah, you're right. So I got my, 10% off. So that was a
Mhm.
way where like the rules are in my favor.
Naる
And
ほど
so
ね。
like I've done this once in 20 years. So I hope I don't come across as like an annoying corner, but I was just more curious, like what are like if this is the rule, like let's go, let's see what this is. So I have this love-hate relationship, I think, with the rules in Japan.
That's definitely both are very, very relatable experiences. I don't think I have the guts to do the 1 yen short thing. I think
Not a
yeah,
lot,
out
like
of
20 years,
curiosity.
5 times probably.
Yeah.
But yeah, just curious. Yeah.
So man, I think okay, I think it's also probably interesting to do it over the years as well to see whether there is a difference, especially now with a lot more inbound tourism, whether it becomes more strict or actually more lenient.
I think it actually happened to me when I lived in Osaka. I think it might be a
Oh,
Kansai thing where they're like, yeah, okay, don't worry about it. I think
um,
maybe once it happened, but yeah,
that's also very interesting. There's definitely like regional differences too,
for
I'm
sure,
sure.
for sure.
Yeah. Okay. And the last question is, how can the audience be helpful to you?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to sound too marketing, like and review or like smash that subscribe button or like I don't want to come across as that thing. Writing reviews are super helpful. Whether it's and write it in your native language because
Mm,
if it's a person visiting from mainland China or a German person, like we would love to hear their reviews in their language to attract more people, right?
mhm,
So reviews are super helpful. But in the moment in the show, clearly not holding back and just yelling a suggestion is the best way to help us.
mhm,
Being silent would be the opposite of helping. And I hope that's not why you came to an improv show to be silent, right?
mhm.
Like it's welcome, that's fine, but we don't need 100 people to be silent at an improv show. So the best way to help would just be have fun. Think about it as your suggestions are tailoring the show to your wants,
Mm,
right? If you want to see a story about mountain climbing, or if you want to see a story about salsa dancing, or if you want to see a story about, sightseeing in Kamakura, tell us that, and we'll make hopefully a compelling, relatable, comedic story based on that. So like the show's yours. We're
mhm,
there on stage to build your show.
mhm.
That's the best way to have it. Like, let us know what you want, and we'll take care of it.
That's awesome for sure. I think that's all the questions that I have for you today. So thank you, Mike, so
Yeah.
much again for being a guest on the pod. And everyone, be sure to check out the next Pirates of Tokyo Bay show on January 26th.
Yeah.
Thank
Piratesoftokyo.com.
Yes, I will put the link down below. Thank you so much again. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.